Hey folks, you're tuning in to the Garden Library, a new blogcast publishing on Substack. I'm your host, the librarian. Imagine this. Your aunt is arguing with your older cousin before a party. Your aunt is mad that your cousin bought lollipops and cheese puffs when she asked him to go buy snacks from the store. Your cousin argues that your aunt left her request open-ended, as a snack can mean different things to different people. He could only purchase snacks according to his idea of a snack. Your aunt contends that she didn't tell your cousin to get lollipops or cheese puffs. She insists that he shouldn't have bought snacks based on his preference, but should have returned to ask her. The two now ask for your opinion on the matter as a tiebreaker to this argument. Who do you think is in the wrong? If you find this scenario debatable, you wouldn't be alone. This scenario contains the very argument central to American constitutional law since the dawn of the Constitution. In the famous debate over the central bank, it was born in the context of a question about the powers of the U.S. government. Alexander Hamilton believed that the ability to create a central bank was an implied power in the Constitution, as the government could do anything necessary and proper. Thomas Jefferson argued that nowhere was it explicitly enumerated that the government could create a central bank. He believed that doing so was an overreach of current powers. Drawing from this historical debate, in the introductory scenario, you played the role of George Washington, who made the final decision on the question of a central bank. But over 2 centuries after this constitutional dispute, the debate on implicity or explicity persists. Welcome. I'm the librarian, and you are listening to the Garden Library. This is a blogcast that tackles a variety of topics with a skew towards climate and environmental policy. This is Chapter 1, Page 1, and we're discussing green amendments. The American legal world is divided between what's explicitly written as the law and what we can interpret or is implied in its meaning. Originalists, as they're called, believe the Constitution should be judged by what was written and meant at the time, while opponents believe we should reinterpret the text and embrace the flexibility of law today. Nowhere has this divide been displayed more recently than in the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. In Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the Supreme Court ruled that because the Constitution does not explicitly mention abortion, it does not confer a right to abortion. In doing so, the court effectively undid the decision made 50 years prior. This resulted in abortion bans nationwide, with some draconian laws going so far as to imprison women who get an abortion with no exception for rape. While I could spend hours discussing my strong disagreement with the Dobbs decision, why the 14th Amendment does in fact protect abortion, and how much the Dobbs decision runs contrary to legal precedent, I mentioned it to argue a more fundamental point. That unless a right is explicit in a constitution, it cannot be guaranteed under an originalist perspective. This statement is where the future of the climate fight hangs in the balance. Currently, only 3 states have a Green Amendment in their constitution: New York, Pennsylvania, and Montana, while other states, like New Mexico, have been trying to get them passed. Despite being a policy ask since the 1970s, Green Amendments are a very niche topic in the discussion of environmental policy. For starters, what is a Green Amendment? Generally speaking, a Green Amendment explicitly enshrines the rights of all people, including future generations, to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. Within the context of legal power, amendments to a constitution offer the highest level of protection. Recall the Dobbs ruling, where the lack of an explicit constitutional mention was the reason for overturning Roe v. Wade? Well, that same rhetoric was used to overturn a New York restriction that required New Yorkers who want to carry a handgun in public to show a special need to defend themselves. The Supreme Court ruled that New York gun regulation violated the explicit Second Amendment right to bear arms. When it comes to the judicial system, our best shot at enshrining the rights of the people is getting it amended to the Constitution. Unfortunately, at the national level, that's virtually impossible due to the 2/3 of Congress needed to propose and vote in favor of an amendment, followed by the 3/4 of states needed to ratify a proposed amendment. But at the state level, we've already seen success. In this fight for a green future, I hope to spotlight the untapped potential of this tool in our climate workbench. Montana's 1970 Green Amendment was instrumental in a major climate win just last year. In 2023, for the first time in American history, 16 youths won a lawsuit against the state of Montana for violating their constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment, both presently and in the future. This hinged on Montana's approval of fossil fuel development, namely coal and gas, despite the measured impact on the climate crisis. The judge sided with the youth, going so far as to affirm fossil fuels as the primary cause of climate change and its impacts. Montana is the 6th largest coal producer in America, and this ruling opens up Pandora's box, presenting numerous avenues for the people of Montana to address climate change. These avenues include financial compensation for disadvantaged communities and the blocking of development and leasing, potentially even forcing the state of Montana to decarbonize. While Montana is a gold star for green amendments, New York represents the limitations of the policy. Unlike Montana, New York adopted a green amendment in as recent as 2021. This leaves much of the scope of the law up in the air. Rulings so far have been fairly ambiguous on whether the amendment applies to private parties and what exactly needs to be true to prove a violation exists. However, following the favorable decision in Montana, the prospects for legal action under New York's Green Amendment are optimistic. By no means am I suggesting we abandon all other efforts for green amendments. Implementing these amendments is costly and time-consuming. We lack the manpower to build a coalition large and strong enough to force it through state amendment processes. Many states have strong voting blocs in their government that would prevent an amendment like this from passing, and the fossil fuel industry would certainly empty its pockets opposing it. Even in a state like New York, it took over 4 years to finally pass. So imagine just how long and grueling the process would be in a more conservative state. Here's the point. As advocates, activists, and people of this nation, we must address climate change. While many tools exist within our toolkit, one particularly powerful one has gone overlooked. Green amendments have the fundamental power to reshape a state's battle within this crisis, as shown in Montana. There is no reason we shouldn't include efforts to push green amendments into the state legislature, especially in states like Michigan. Michigan has a strong state governance, with all 3 levers being controlled by the majority Democratic Party and containing some of the most progressive legislators in America. The perfect conditions for a green amendment. Why aren't we more aggressively pushing for it? Here are the outcomes laid out clearly. If the amendment doesn't pass in Michigan, the vote can be used as political evidence of a legislator's unwillingness to rise to the challenge. Voters and activists having an on-record no vote can pressure their legislators and either oust them or persuade them to change. If the amendment does pass in Michigan, it enshrines the people's right to a healthy climate within the state and can be a persuasive precedent in future legal cases across the nation. In any case, the benefit of intra-state coalition building and increased press attention on climate justifies a push for a Green Amendment. Insofar as originalist perspectives exist within our legal system, especially in the Supreme Court, there exists a need for explicit environmental protection on the books. Green amendments provide us explicit legal standing when fighting against actions that worsen the environmental crises. If Montana has shown us anything, it's that the power of green amendments should not be overlooked by activists. Though they may have a rocky start as New York continues to experiment with the scope of its Green Amendment, once established, they're nigh impossible to tear down and are an invaluable resource. We can't foresee the future of politics, nor can we guarantee every policy pans out as planned. But it helps to discuss, debate, and strategize methods. In doing so, we ensure that every policy action is genuinely considered. This gives us the best shot at winning against the climate crisis and avoiding a future wrought with severe environmental destruction. This was Chapter 1, Page 1. Thank you for listening. Until the next page unfolds.